Good afternoon, everybody. So our next session is on stress management by Dr. Lakshmi V. Pandit ma'am. So let me introduce her. Dr. Lakshmi V. Pandit ma'am is serving for Department of Psychiatry, Kempegowda Institute of Medical Sciences, Bengaluru as professor and head. She is currently a member of Medical Education Unit and Gender Harassment Committee. Her areas of interest are adult psychiatry, women mental health, medical education, etc. She has many research papers for her credit. I now request Lakshmi V. Pandit ma'am to take over the session. And thank you participants for patiently waiting due to some technical issues, we couldn't start the session in time. Thank you so much for waiting. Our sincere apologies to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. This is day one of your program. And in a purely technical session, I have the honor of sharing something that is totally out of your area of interest for this 1 week program. Can somebody just tell me roughly how many participants we have? Okay. We have...
As of now, we have 111, yes, ma'am.
Okay, 113. Now, I have a presentation of some 60 slides. And I think that is not as important as an active participation by all of you here, because if this is about stress management, it is not something that somebody can actually put together and hand it over to you and say, okay, now this is the formula and this is what you have to use. It doesn't quite work like that. So I would really enjoy talking to you all, and some, not some, I would say a lot of interaction is what's going to make this, not just interesting, but we can sit here, will be seen by the on video. So not just interesting, but more meaningful. So if I were to ask you all questions in between, or give you a small topic and say let me hear what you have to say about it, then I want as much participation as possible, because that's what makes it more meaningful than me continuously saying something, whether it's applicable to you or not, more in the context of what I see it rather than what you want to see it. So with that introduction, and maybe an apology for having started late, the 2-hour session has now come down to an hour and a half, but it doesn't really matter because it's not about the quantity, it's about quality. And let's have some interesting interaction. I am Dr. Lakshmi Pandit from the Department of Psychiatry, KIMS, and I thank the organizers for giving me a small part of their program to talk about stress management, which you all know, is the need of the hour. I think all of us can say that stress is now kind of our middle name. Somebody says no audio. Am I audible? Can somebody respond? Am I audible? Okay, some are saying yes, some are saying no. Is there, I don't know if there's a platform in which, yeah, there is a chat box. I think all of you can just, anything you want to contribute, you can just put it into the chat box when we have some issue to discuss. Yeah. So moving on from here, the presentation outline would be something like this. First of all, a general awareness. It's not like, none of us know what stress is, but just a kind of an outline to talk about or introduce the concept of stress and why stress is an issue so important. The second of all, because I'm talking to a working population, and I assume that you're all engineers working in different setups, or you're all in the teaching line, I'm not so sure. But as you're all a working population, there is immense amount of stress immaterial of what arena you're working. stress, like I said, is almost our middle name now. And the last but not the least is self-help. I hope to be able to do justice, though the time has kind of reduced a bit. Now, all of us enter into any program like this with some expectation. If you could all unmute yourself at various times and tell me, what do you think you expect from this program? What is it that you are looking forward to, so that it will help me to give some kind of direction to the entire presentation?
Some tips and tricks to reduce stress during our daily lives.
Okay. I think that is very well put, tips and tricks. What else? Anything else? Can we have very quick responses so that we can go on?
Have to be in peace, and then we have to work, we have to bring our best outside.
Okay. So that we can perform to our best.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Anything else?
Madam, how to give our best in all managing all responsibilities, being working professional.
Okay.
And,
How do I manage all my responsibilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we have some of the gentlemen respond? We have very active ladies.
More responsibilities are taken by ladies, no, madam.
Yeah, I would say yes to that, but maybe the gentlemen are going to oppose. Okay. Now there's a query here that says how to handle the elderly. Okay. You can put your queries into the chat box also. I'm just trying to make a note to see, how best I can talk about your, the things that you're looking for. Anything else? Anybody would like to just put in a quick query or a quick how to manage family and work? Okay. Right. So I will assume that those are the commonest queries, and so the others haven't really responded. How to handle myself in difficult situations. Okay.
And also, ma'am, how to overcome this anxiety
Okay.
and being too emotional.
Okay. Excellent. That was a wonderful response, and I'm feeling all geared up now that you're going to respond to anything that I might just throw out there in the form of a question. So I will proceed from here. Right. Express yourself without hurting anyone. Okay. Now, yeah. So, 1 second. With that, I will move on. The first part, I have confined to some degree of general awareness. Not that you don't know about stress, but just to give you an outline. What is stress? What are the types of stress? The fact that each of us are individuals. Stress originates in the body and affects your body. And we have a set of symptoms that occur as a result of stress. And all stress comes at a cost. So if I were to ask you again, what is stress? What do you understand by stress? What does the word stress mean to you all? Maybe it kind of brings out a whole lot of adjectives, but whatever it is, what do you think stress is? What does it mean to you? Anyone at all? What do you understand?
Might be a dilemma.
Okay.
Dilemma in handling multiple situations.
Okay. You mean that's one of the things that causes stress. But what is stress actually?
Not able to behave in a normal way in a specific condition.
Okay.
Might be pressure.
Okay. Yeah. It's a kind of a pressure. Sorry?
Overthinking.
Okay, kind of a tension, right? Okay. So coming back to what is stress. Stress is a reaction, okay? When you have some kind of pressure that is excessive. Now we are all exposed to some kind of a normal routine pressure, and we are able to conduct ourselves, perform our work, and it isn't with the, that much of difficulty that we conduct our day-to-day life. Now let us suppose that to some reason that pressure becomes excessive. Then we produce a reaction because that event causes an excess pressure in us, and that results in some kind of a stress, which means, in other words, the demand placed on you by any situation has become excessive. It means that at that point in time, you are not able to cope. We all know what the word cope means, right? Handle. When we are not able to handle the kind of pressure that is applied on us for any reason, then we react with stress. If you see the cartoon there, it says, according to latest research, human body is 20% water and 80% stress. I'm sure none of you will say that this is not true. This is true across all cultures, all ages, both genders, and anybody at any point of time. And it's only escalating as the days proceed. So stress is a wear and tear on our mind and body. As we try to cope with whatever happens within us and outside of us, there's a certain wear and tear on our bodies and on our mind, given that our exterior is continually changing. And this particular thing that says stress, it'll help with natural selection, also means that such of us who cannot cope with stress will collapse in some form or the other. So that again brings us back to the point that all of us face stress, and all of us need to know how best to handle stress within our abilities. Right. So coming back to the words that you all use, if I look at the definition of stress, there is a certain pressure on all of us, and all of us have a certain resource. Given that we are working within the confines of that resource, we are fine. But when we are asked to step outside the resource, then the pressure becomes excessive, and that is what results in stress. A very, very simple equation to put it this way. And stress causes in us a whole lot of negative feelings. Now, you all use the word, it's pressure, it's anxiety, etc., etc. So we worry, we get anxious, we get tense. Tension is a word that we are very, very familiar with. And because of all this, we get a little tired, we get exhausted. Several times, the stress also causes feelings of fear in us. Why? I'm not able to cope with something. Am I going to, collapse? So we get frightened by it. We get depressed by it. And when I feel that I was coping till about a year back, but I can't cope now, there are times when I get angry with myself. Why am I this way? Why am I not able to cope? What's happening to me? At times, the word elated is used. Elated is excessive happiness. That becomes a way of coping. We put up a front and we try to be jovial. They say that the person who laughs the most or makes the others laugh the most is the one who is most anxious or most depressed within themselves. So these are all the feelings that stress evokes in us. Now, we can to a certain extent classify stress. I've used two different ways to classify stress. One of them being this. There's something known as negative stress. There's something known as positive stress. I'm sure roughly in your mind, you'll be able to know what it means. Positive stress is what causes motivation in us, in the sense studies have shown that, let's say, you do not expose students to any kind of pressure at all. There's no anxiety. There's nothing to say that, they need to perform, at an average or above an average. Then students don't perform. So that minimal anxiety and minimal tension is required to perform. Why? Because that translates to motivation. So positive stress is anything that motivates us. It stimulates us to cope. It helps us to do what we have to do in a happy way, in a positive way, in a productive way. And it is something that helps us survive. If that minimal stress is there, probably we would not be able to cope even with our day-to-day things in a positive sort of way. So positive stress is motivational. We require it in order to function adequately, function normally. But if you look at negative stress, negative stress is definitely not something that is good for us. We already said it bothers your mind, therefore it bothers the body, because the mind and body are not two separate things, they are linked. So the stress that starts off with the mind has an effect on various parts of your body, and there is no confining to any part. There's a figure that says, your back, your heart, your spine, your low back, your head, etc. But there's no part of your body that is kind of not affected by stress. It can start with digestive problems. So the question will be, is that so? Does stress cause digestive problems? It does. There's an entity called irritable bowel syndrome, which is actually caused by a great deal of anxiety in the individual, built up over a long period of time. Because your brain and your body are interconnected. The brain, whatever is in the brain, in the head rather, the brain is your central nervous system, and anything that comes out of that is your peripheral nervous system. There's also something known as the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system works quietly within your body, and it controls all your organs, your heart, your your intestine, etc. It controls all that. So when the body is put through stress, it is the autonomic system that takes over, and it kind of has a negative effect on your entire organs. So you may have headaches. There's something known as a tension headache. That's what it's called, because your anxiety and tension is translated to a physical symptom, and that is headache. You can have digestive problems, like I said. There are skin conditions which are definitely exacerbated with stress. Every time there's a stress, the skin condition worsens. And if the anxiety is taken care of or treated, the skin condition improves. Sleeplessness, that is almost the presentation of anxiety. Ulcers, we all know. We say, don't worry, you'll get an ulcer, is a very casual comment. So similarly, any kind of stress affects your mind and affects your body. That is one way of looking at stress. The good stress and the bad stress, the eustress and the distress. The other way of looking at it is whether it is external or internal. This is more like the source of stress. Is it coming from the outside world? Is it coming from within of me? So if you look at external stressors, now none of us are exempt from this. We are all exposed to all kinds of stress in the environment. It may be the physical environment, social interaction, the organization in which you work, life events. We all have life events. What is very interesting is whether the life event is positive or negative, it can give rise to stress and anxiety. Let us say a marriage in the family. The marriage is a positive event, but yet marriage is considered a kind of stress because it results in
क्या तुम पागल हो?
you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
There is an option here.
Yeah.
Go down and go near your PPT. Okay. It's shared, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Okay. Can somebody tell me at what point in time you stopped sharing me?
Ma'am, I think you have to go to the previous slides.
Yeah. Was I audible here?
Yeah, ma'am, here. From here you have to.
From here. Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I was saying that it appears like we're going to have a lot of hitches. So, see, stress, like I classified stress as being, good stress and bad stress. The other way to classify stress is external and internal. So external is, as you can understand, it's outside of us, in the outside world. Internal stress is within us. So if you look at external stress, everything around us can, prove as a source of stress. For example, your physical environment, your social interaction, the organization in which you work, your major life events. Now, all life events, whether positive or negative, are a source of stress. For example, if there is, say, a wedding in the family, that is also, though a positive event, it's a source of stress. And of course, our daily hassles of living, like one of the participants talked about. If you look at the physical environment, we will all agree that the rate at which Bangalore is growing and the rate at which, all metropolitan cities are growing, we see much more, what shall I say, noise around us, intolerable noise. We have to get used to the traffic, the, umpteen number of vehicles around us. We have temperatures going up. Heat has definitely increased. We know there is a, change in the climate, and it's gradually getting worse year by year. And because of the crowding in several places, lot of people live in confined spaces, and things are not as comfortable as they used to be several decades ago, or even maybe 1 or 2 decades ago. So the physical environment is definitely a source of stress to all of us. Right. Then comes social interaction. We are social beings. We interact with each other all the time, be it at home, be it outside, be it at work. And if, God forbid, those social interactions are not pleasant, okay, if they are in any way disturbing to us, like in an official environment where there is some rudeness, or you have a boss who's not really very, congenial or friendly or understanding, and that begins to act as a source of stress. Any kind of aggression or abusiveness in your environment or your surroundings, all that acts as a source of stress. So social interactions can be very cumbersome to any of us at any point in time, anywhere. Now, if you look at your organization, wherever you're working, any type of organization can be comfortable, give us a wonderful working environment, in which case work becomes a pleasure. We wake up wanting to go to work, and like there was a cartoon that said, if Monday was a person, I would have slapped that person. So nobody will, wake up thinking, oh no, it's a Monday, do I have to get back to work? So if we have a friendly organization, all of us want to get back to work, and we would tend to enjoy our work much better. But if the organization is not so friendly, is disturbing in some way, then work becomes a huge hassle to all of us. We all know that there are quite unfriendly rules at several points in time. There are weird regulations that are difficult to follow, but we need to follow. There's a lot of red tape in what we have to sometimes get done. And maybe we have, unnatural deadlines that we have to meet. The whole work issue we will talk about later, but this is just to introduce that. And life events, like I was talking, any life event actually can be a source of stress. Let us say a birth, a death, a lost job, even a promotion, because a promotion indicates a change in your lifestyle. So that can be a source of stress. Like I said, marriage, changes in financial status, pregnancy. And I'm not even touching about the current situation of COVID, where any small event is seen as a very stressful event. The pandemic has made things a lot worse. I'm only talking about, let us say, almost the pre-pandemic time, when even ordinary day-to-day living without the pandemic had become quite stressful. Now, if we have to talk about the pandemic, that requires another totally different session by itself, because life has changed so much for everybody, and every single event or walk of life has become very stressful. Then we, of course, have the daily hassles of, getting to work, getting back, coping with day-to-day activities, commuting, and every small thing becomes an issue. You want to leave to work and you've gotten out of the house and locked the house. You step out and then you realize you've forgotten your keys, and then you have to come back. But you have just, say half an hour to reach work, and there's going to be traffic on the way, and you have to reach within 20 minutes, and you've forgotten your key. Now, that's a very hassling situation. It's going to stress you no end. And any kind of issues on the way, like I said, traffic, any mechanical breakdowns, the list is endless. Anybody who commutes to work will know that n number of things can happen along the way. Right. Then there are all other forms of daily hassles which we have all lived through, and all of them act as, tiny sources of stress, which ultimately keep on building up to form something really huge within ourselves and within our day-to-day activities. So that's all about the external environment. External environment is stressful. We have no doubt about it. Now, what is the counterpart of that? The counterpart is the internal stress. So within ourselves also, the way we are and the kind of people we are also prone to developing stress, contributing to it by ourselves, right? So the lifestyle choices we make, what are the choices I make in my life? Now that will be a source of stress. We'll talk about all that, in a little more detail later. And yeah, your own mind, your own patterns of thinking, the kind of person you are, your belief systems, your expectations of yourself, etc. All of them compound to form internal stress that we generate and that we actually have control of. But much of the time, we don't recognize that as being a source of internal stress. Now, what are the lifestyle choices that we may make that may actually harm us? I put down very simple things here. Let's say caffeine, for example. We all know that, caffeine to a small extent is stimulating. Caffeine to a larger extent causes a lot of trouble. But we choose to have excess caffeine, let us say. Sleep. Sleep is a very rejuvenating part of one's life. Of course, we are short sleepers and we are long sleepers. So some of us who are short sleepers do absolutely fine with 6 hours of sleep. But some of us who don't require 8 hours of sleep. So that's a very individual thing, right? But we may choose to give up our sleep to do something else, to work for longer hours, to seek some form of entertainment in the night. For example, watching television. Now we have Netflix and Amazon, and we see that as a major source of relaxation, and maybe dip into our night sleep, watching all that. So we choose to give up on something that is very important for us, and we have a lack of sleep. Or we choose to work much more than we actually need to for various reasons. Maybe you want to climb faster. Maybe you want to, make a positive impact on your boss. Maybe you want to gain the one-up on your neighbor in the office. We don't really know. But the choice is made by you to overload your schedule and work excessively. So that is some examples of lifestyle choices that we make. Now, negative self-talk is very, very common. I would say it's probably there in 100% of us. All of us have a tendency, and this is a natural, say, default mode of thinking, that we think pessimistically. Many of us analyze situations much more than is actually required. Many of us have a low self-esteem. We tend to criticize ourselves, and that adds a lot of negativity to your system. Now, if you keep on adding everything that I have been saying from the beginning, you can see the human being sinking in little bits as all this adds on. So having a low self-esteem also is, in a way, partly what culture has taught us. As we grow up, we are taught not to be proud of yourself. not to say that you can do this and that, to be more, quiet and less open about your achievements, not to praise yourself. So that becomes a way of life. And in fact, we may even, begin to think that very inadvertently, we are taught to think that we are not good enough. And even in schools and colleges, etc., you rarely see a teacher pick up a child and say, look, this is the good thing you did. In fact, all of us are parents, and if you've attended a parent-teacher meeting, what is the first thing that is told to you? I don't ever remember praise being handed out. And I would stand and, watch several parents. And the first thing the teacher would say was, oh, your boy is naughty. Oh, your girl talks a lot. Oh, this, oh, that. So the negative feedback is, handed over ever so easily. And that goes back to the child. How is the child supposed to learn that I can think positively of myself? So the child begins, even as children, we begin to think negatively of ourselves, criticize ourselves, and have a very low opinion of ourselves. Now that, as we grows with us, and in all situations, including our places of work, it becomes a source of stress, because no matter what our achievement, we always believe we are not good enough, or we could have done better. So that's a huge amount of negative self-talk that we do to ourselves. And we have a lot of mind traps, the length and breadth of our life. So we all have very unrealistic expectations of ourselves. Like one of the participants said, we are handling multiple roles. How do we handle multiple roles? I wonder if we ever sit back and think, should I be handling multiple roles? Can I do something not to handle it? Is it true that those around me and the world around me will not take over if I don't do something? So very many times we have very unrealistic expectations of ourselves and expect ourselves to meet that. So when that happens, that is definitely a source of stress. And everything is taken personally, in the sense, if a comment is passed, that comment is absorbed onto me, and I feel, oh, that was told to me, which means I am not good enough. So that is going to again add to my stress and my feeling of low self-esteem. We have this dichotomy of, all or none thinking. We tend to say, I don't say I have shades of not being good. I will think, or I will tell myself, I'm very bad at this. I'm not good at all. So that is another form of thinking that we do. We kind of exaggerate on the negativity. We very rarely exaggerate on the positivity or even acknowledge positivity. But when it comes to negativity, we are ready to exaggerate and absorb all the, negative emotions that come with that. And we also have very rigid forms of thinking. Anybody with a rigid form of thinking is most likely to experience stress. The one that is the individual who's most adaptive, most adjusting, is the one person who would probably have much less stress as they move through their life. So these are mind traps that are, common to all of us. We are now talking about the internal aspects of what causes stress. Then, of course, we have personality. Personality, when we say personality, we don't mean the physical appearance. When we say personality, we mean what are the traits that a person has. We all grow up with certain traits, and these traits are actually identifiable when individuals are small children. So when we describe children, we say, oh, this child is very stubborn. That child is very quiet. This child is very friendly. That child doesn't socialize at all. So those traits are actually seen in childhood, and they kind of grow the same way. And by the time we are about 17, 18, we are fully formed adults, and our personality is evident to the outside world. So to give you some examples of personalities that can result in a lot of stress. Let's say a perfectionist. Okay, whatever I do has to be perfect. If I don't do something perfectly, remember, this is an internal thing. The outside world is not telling you to be perfect, but you feel you're not perfect enough. You haven't done it well enough. And so it's a source of stress to you. Other thing is workaholics. Workaholics, of course, they cause stress to the outside world also being that way, but they put a lot of pressure on themselves, saying that this much has to be done and I have to do it in a certain given amount of time. So a lot of pressure is applied on myself if I consider myself as a workaholic. That is to name to you or give you two examples of personality traits that definitely cause trouble and cause stress. Of course, all said and done, each of us are different. You are an individual. You are an accumulation of several things. Your environment, your childhood, people who brought you up, the kind of environment you grew up in, your education, your friends, etc., and everything that you were exposed to till you became an adult. Okay, not audible, they say. Am I not audible? Can anybody respond?
Ma'am, you're audible, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay, somebody said not audible. So each of us are unique. We are absolutely unique. There are no two of us. Everyone has their own perception of the outside world, own reaction to the outside world. And there is nothing like a formula that says this much stress is good in a blanket sort of way for everybody. So stress is also different for different people, different for all of us. And optimal stress for me will definitely not be the optimal stress for another person. Some are much more sensitive owing to the kind of experiences they've had in life. Some are less sensitive. So that is a very individualistic thing. So we cannot say this many units of stress is okay. You ought not to have more stress than that. It's going to cause you problems. So which means it is also in my hands to recognize what is stressful for me and to avoid crossing that level in that equation. I stay within my resources so that I don't experience stress. So that's an individual responsibility, which is why we're having this talk at all, because the responsibility of not crossing, the red line into stress is very personal, and it is in the hands of each one of you. Now, this stress definitely acts on the body. This is just one slide to show you that it acts on the entire system. Entire, let us say your body parts, and it acts on all your hormonal system as well. So when you're stressed, you have a lot of adrenaline being released in your body, and adrenaline in its own way does a lot of damage to you. If you look at an acute stress response, this is what happens. We all know, if it is very intense, we call it a panic attack. What happens in that state of anxiety is you sweat, you have palpitation, you have rapid breathing, your heart rate increases, and there are times when you feel that I'm not going to make it, I'm going to die. That's an extreme amount of stress, or what is known as a panic attack. And that is not something that should be neglected. There are several individuals who mistake it to be a cardiac event and see a cardiologist, after which they are eventually referred to us for care. So that's an extreme, form of anxiety. But any of these symptoms can occur individually when you are under stress and when you are anxious. This is just to introduce you to that concept. So the symptoms of stress can be, like I said, vast, any part of your body, and for example, a symptom like nausea. Every time I get ready and I start going to work, I have a kind of nausea and I can't eat. And I say, I'm not hungry, I can't eat. I only feel hungry after I get to work, after an hour or so. Why do you think that happens? If you're anxious about getting to work, anxious about the start of day, anxious about what to expect, in work, that anxiety totally kills your appetite and you're totally unable to eat or drink anything in the morning. So that is the amount to which stress can influence, your whole body systems. This is again a list of physical symptoms that I have already covered. So coming to your mind, what does it do? If you have a great deal of stress and that is acting on you, there are a lot of things that can happen in your functioning. Let us say you're trying to work. You find you can't work because you can't concentrate. You have something on the back of your mind, or something in your system that says things are not the same and your mind is distracted. So obviously you're not going to be able to concentrate on what you're doing. And the minute you don't concentrate, you're unable to grasp, you're unable to retain. After all, remembering and retaining is a function of concentration to begin with. If you don't have concentration, nothing actually enters your system for it to be assimilated. So you will have memory lapses, you will become forgetful, and you'll find that you're not able to analyze things. So decision making becomes a problem, which to you will be, why am I so confused? Why am I not able to handle, simple issues which I used to handle before, right? And like I said, panic attacks. So these are all the things that happen in our day-to-day life when we are stress on the background of, several issues, n number of issues that we may have. Behaviorally, again, this is a kind of a repetition. Your appetite changes. Individuals do or indulge in behaviors that relieve their stress. And that relief of stress can be by eating, excessive eating. It may result in a condition known as bulimia, excessive vomiting, which can lead to anorexia. Individuals take to alcohol, the core of that being stress. Substances, usually seen, in the second and third decade of life. They are more or most often in the second decade of life where they are likely to take drugs. Smoking, because that is a kind of a relief mechanism, smoking. And physically, they are seen to be restless, fidgeting, etc. as a result of whatever behavioral addictions that develop. Now, stress is a very common reason for an individual to develop addictions of various sorts, because they say, if I smoke, if I take alcohol, if I indulge in substance, I have moved to another world. I am another me. I am not a me who is unable to handle that level of stress. So it can result in a whole lot of behavioral symptoms, whole lot of emotional symptoms. It can be seen as anger. It can be seen as, panic attacks. You can have bouts of depression. Now, depression is actually a very, very wide term. There is clinical depression and non-clinical depression that occurs as a result of your day-to-day activities, where depression is, very transient. Now, depression should be differentiated from sadness. Sadness is a very passing phase or a passing word. I wanted to watch a movie with my friend. I went to the theater. I didn't get a ticket. Oh, I was so sad after that. That is sad. Sad is a very brief thing. Okay, when that sadness for any reason becomes very prolonged, lasts for days, days on end, forbids you from working, forbids you from being productive, and it affects your biological systems, you can't eat, sleep, etc., that becomes clinical depression. So if your stress and the effects on your mind are prolonged, last for a long time, then the individual is likely to face depression. Stress, anxiety, depression are common occurrences. Now, there are several bodily illnesses that are related to stress. Of that, like I said, anything can exacerbate. You have an underlying diabetes, hypertension, or a skin condition, etc. Bronchial asthma, that is, you get your wheezing, etc. And several immune diseases like joint pains, any of those can exacerbate with stress. That's a very well-known, correlation. Now, probably the worst of all is cardiovascular diseases. Initially, it was said, initially meaning, I would say about maybe less than a decade ago, or even 5-6 years ago, it was commonly said that your dietary habits, your lack of exercise, your accumulation of cholesterol in the body is what causes atherosclerosis or the closure of blocking of arteries, and you develop what is known as a heart attack or a cardiovascular condition. But now it has been found that probably a much more important factor than even your diet or your exercise is stress. So stress contributes in a very large way to cardiovascular disorders. And we see now younger and younger individuals getting myocardial infarctions, that is a heart attack. And probably the youngest I have heard so far was I think a 22-year-old. But if you probably Google, you'll get a much younger age. This is from my cardiology friends who have said that probably the youngest they have seen was a 21 or a 22-year-old boy who had a heart attack and had to undergo, stenting. So you can see that the role of stress is actually immense in keeping our body ill or keeping our body fit, right? So it again throws back on us our responsibility in understanding stress. What is stress? Why is it happening to me? How can I identify this? How can I reduce it? It's a huge responsibility. And we all have to wake up to that. And like I said, each one to himself in this issue. So in this part 1, we talked about what stress is, what are the types of stress. Every individual is different. It affects body and mind. There are symptoms, and stress comes at a huge cost to your body. Does anybody want to say anything at the end of this session? Any comments? Anybody? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So a lot of questions are coming about handling. So what I do is I will carry on so that I come to that bit faster. Now, stress at work, right? All of us need not say that we experience stress at work, but now it is definitely increasing. In fact, if you're in contact with the younger generation, the third decade, second decade, third decade, fourth decade, you can see that they're really stressed at their work for various reasons. And we kind of all know, we would have discussed at some point in time why it is occurring more now. Now, this is the outline. Why do we work? What are the factors that cause stress? Work patterns, situations, etc. I will not give you the case study because that will take too much time. So why do we work? We all know why we work. We work because we require an income. We have to subsist. We have to take care of a family. We need that kind of a physical exercise, mental exercise. We need to be in touch with people. We're realizing that now when, because of COVID situations, everybody's cooped up at home and they are working at home and they don't have contact with the outside world. In a way, it is pleasant because you get a lot more done. You don't have to travel in this traffic, etc. But a lot more is lost also because there's no social interaction. There's no contact with human beings. And we're social animals. We need to meet people. We need to talk to people. And that isn't happening. We work because we have to know that we have some self-worth and we are competent. I, as a human being, can achieve something. We need to know that. And that is why we need to work. Now, when we look at work stress, why does work stress occur? Work stress occurs because of several reasons. First of all of us have a drive for success. Now, all of what I'm going to cover in this slide is that if everything is optimal, and optimal for me is not optimal for you. Optimal for A is not the same for B, not the same for C. So everything that is optimal for me, if I'm able to stay within those optimal limits, I'm going to do fine. But unknowingly, if I step that optimal limit, I cross it, it's going to cause stress. For example, drive for success. We all have a drive for success. But how much are we going to push ourselves? Where do we draw the line? Where am I going to push myself more than what I actually can? So the drive for success is one of the contributing factors to work stress, right? Now, other things are in the changing world of today. We have changing work conditions. We have a lot more demand placed on people, longer working hours. I am more familiar with the IT industry. I have a lot of people around me who work in IT. So I can see that the working hours more so now because of COVID and people are at home. There aren't any there's no closure. The laptop opens at 9 and it stays open till 10 in the night, 12 in the night. You know, God only knows when they are able to take off and take rest. So we have a lot of changing work patterns, which leads to stress. Changing work conditions because there is so much pressure around us. Like I said, I'm not able to draw the line as to shutting my laptop because my constant fear is this other colleague of mine is going to work 10 hours a day and probably going to produce something much more than I can. Then what if he's the one getting promoted and I'm not getting promoted? What if our salaries are weighted according to our performance and our salaries are, oh, somebody says audio issue since the beginning. You'll all have to tell me if I cannot be heard properly.
Ma'am, you're audible, ma'am. Might be there will be a network issue from their side.
Their side, okay.
If that's the case, I'll raise, ma'am.
Okay, sure. So, yeah. So there is the work conditions, like like for example, when people who are in this, for example, me, let's take me. I'm 60 now. When I joined work 4 decades ago, everything was stable. You got into a job, you stayed in a stable job, you retired in the job, and you're very comfortable because you know you're going to be there. But things are very different now. Work patterns are different. The time for which you work in a place is very short. People are shifting every 2 to 3 years. And if they have to be shifting every 2 to 3 years, they have to keep expanding their knowledge, keep reading, keep appearing for interviews. You don't know what's expected of you. So that's a terrible change in work patterns that is happening for the current generation. So some people are underworked, some people are overworked. Now, underworked is also a concept. You would have heard in IT industries that there are certain people put on the bench. So they sit there because some projects are not available. They are given some kind of a retainer salary. They're not given their full salary. And they are sitting there very stressed as to, am I going to enter a project or not? Or in 3 months' time, am I going to lose my job and they're asked me to go away? So you can imagine how the underworked feel. On the other hand, you have the overworked who feel that there just isn't a break. How do I rest my mind? How do I rejuvenate? Because work is a thinking process. And if you don't replenish your energy, mental energy, there's no way that you can perform to your optimum level. So that is a huge, immense source of stress. And like I said, a lot of uncertainty because people can be thrown out of jobs. People can be asked to leave at short notice. Their incomes can be cut down for various reasons. We don't know what all can happen. So the certainty of a long-term job and retiring in the job is no longer there. So with this amount of anxiety, what is going to happen? There's going to be conflict. Who can say that you're going to have very pleasant relationship with your colleagues and with your seniors, knowing that there is this amount of insecurity that you're feeling in your life? So a lot of conflicts occur. And then relationships, therefore, become more competitive rather than pleasant, rather than reassuring. I doubt that there are very many, I could be wrong, very many supportive relationships that happen at work. I see that as a much more harder phenomena these days than in the past. Overwork is a thing now. Everybody talks about being, overworked, and your technical skills are kind of literally drained in a very, very rapid way. Everything has to come out in a short time. You're given short deadlines, which may be very unrealistic. And, you really, probably the person handing the work to you also knows it can't be done, and you also know, but that is what is expected of you, because after all, it's a hierarchy, and pecking occurs down the pecking order. So the higher will peck on the lower at all times. So the highest says this amount has to be done, and then everybody down the pecking order gets pecked for work that is not done. So there is a thing of being overworked. It is a huge thing now, and I see that in a very big way. And it is not happening only in one particular profession. It is happening in all professions, blanket across any levels of education or any, pattern of work that you may have chosen. So in summary, work is very important for all of us. Work stress is a reality. It is there, right? Job satisfaction is something that is really hard to come by these days, and therefore we are stressed. Huge responsibilities are given to individuals who find themselves unable to live up to the expectations of those around them. Relationships are more often bad than good and not really working as a support system. And changes are occurring much more faster. What change would have, say, taken a decade to occur is occurring every 5 years. And again, all this comes at a huge cost on an individual. So with that, I've come to the end of part 3. Any questions, any queries now? Anybody has anything to ask at this time? And then we come to the last but not the least, which is the self-help, which we're all looking at. Whatever I spoke about now is a reality. Probably, you would have socialized with a huge number of people, and you would have seen that, stress is very vast and across all fields of life. That is an accepted thing now. So I have talked about that, which is not new. I have talked about the ill effects of stress on the body, which I'm sure you would have read in various situations, but probably not understood the actual impact of that, because that is occurring as tiny, tiny, tiny building blocks that build every day, to form your Tower of London or the or whatever tallest building, Burj Khalifa, whatever. So it's like building up in small blocks and growing every day of your life. So the concept of self-help is what is going to take care of that. And it doesn't matter at what stage of life you are in now, what age you are now, it is never too late to start. But that is the key to help. Help is not going to come from outside all the time. Help comes from within us, and we have to look for it within us. Now, several of the things that I say when I talk about self-help, probably the response will be, oh, it's easy to say, but it is very difficult to do. And I will definitely accept that. But here we are not given a choice. It's either staying physically and mentally healthy for the rest of your life. Nobody's looking at longevity of life, right? What are you going to do with quantity if you don't have quality? We're looking at quality. So even if your days are numbered, or even if you have many, many days to go, you want the quality to be good. So the whole discussion from now is going to be, how can I make my quality of life better? What do I have to do to make it better? And all the queries that have come till now have basically concentrated on how can I handle my life to make it less stressful. Now remember, it is impossible to give solutions, mathematical solutions. Okay, this is your question and this is how I will derive your formula to reduce stress. No, there are concepts, and we have to apply those concepts to our life to the best of our ability. There is some give and take. I give up something to gain something. We can't always win. There is no win-win. You can't win all the time, right? So you lose some, you get some. So you have to decide, what do I lose to get what I want? And that's a very, very individual equation that each of you have to look at yourselves. So the outline will be identification. How do I know I'm stressed? Okay, let's find out. Next, should I or am I going to admit to myself I am stressed? Because if you don't admit that and you say you're fine and you're disintegrating at the same time, it is not going to help any. You're never going to work to reduce your stress. So identify the stress, admit it, say you're stressed, and then look at what coping strategies you have within yourself so that you can cope with your stress and make the necessary alterations in your life. So that is the pattern of the presentation that I will follow. First of all, recognizing the problem. Now, the most important thing to do here is to recognize I am stressed. Two, what is the source of this stress? We talked about the external environment. We talked about the internal environment. Very many times we are helpless to deal with the external environment. We talk about pollution, traffic, bumpy roads, overcrowding. Despite the COVID pandemic, people are not wearing masks. City market is up to its hilt with people. That is the external environment. How many of us actually have control over that? I'm sorry, but we don't. So where is this negative stress coming from as far as I am concerned? So the source of negative stress from within of me, that is what we need to recognize. Now, admitting to stress is not a sign of weakness. I'm sure many of us feel that I don't want somebody to tell me, look, you're so stressed, you're doing this. There's nothing wrong with that. If somebody is saying it, it's probably happening to you. So admitting that your stress is not a sign of weakness, but it is a sign of strength, because you are ready to admit that somewhere you are not capable of doing something, somewhere you're capable of doing something. So recognizing that red line is a sign of strength. And then looking at all the issues that we talked of when we talked of internal internal sources of stress, recognize that. Where is the stress coming from from within of me. Identify, recognize. That is the problem. Then comes the question of coping. So there are various strategies. A very simple strategy which I have put together here is the ABC strategy, so to say. First of all, awareness. I am stressed. Where is my stress coming from? And how am I reacting to this stress? Next, balance. There is a very fine balance. We said there is positive stress and negative stress. If there is positive stress, you perform. If there is a negative stress, you don't. So where is this line for me? Where does positive end and where does negative begin? How much can I cope with? Learn to identify that balance and stay within that balance as much as possible. Try not to cross the red line because that is very detrimental for you. Then comes control. How can I control the situation? What can I do to help myself combat these negative effects or come over these negative effects? So you can see here that there is no solution or formula that I have put, but each of you has to apply this to yourself. I become aware of my issues. I learn to balance my issues. I learn to control my issues. So it is very, very individualistic to each of us. Right. Having said that, how am I going to make it happen? Literally, how do I translate this into action? Change the way you think, change the way you behave, and change your lifestyle. These are the major changes that have to come into each of us if we want to be able to cope with whatever stress we are framing. Now, you can try and apply whatever I'm going to talk about now to your own situations and see. Right. Change your way of thinking, something known as reframing. Reframing is a technique to change the way you look at things so that you feel better about them. There are many ways to interpret the same situation, right? You can have a positive way, you can have a negative way, you can have a bitter way, you can have a sweet way. Pick the one you like. If you pick the one you don't like, you're going to go downhill. So look at the situation, pick the one you like, the one that is positive for you. Pick that interpretation, right? So that it comforts your mind. Reframing will not change external reality, but it will guide you to handle things in a different way because you see things differently. If you look at something positively, it looks positive. The situation is the same. If you look at something negatively, any situation looks negative. So it is the glasses you're wearing, right? It is the glass that you choose to wear. So choose to wear a positive glass so that you reframe what you are looking in a positive manner. Everything that I'm saying is easier said than done. And all of these come through practice. You have to identify that you're doing wrong each time and change the way you think. Okay, that's the only way reframing will occur. Here is a small example. This is cognitive reframing. You see your wife in a men's clothing store. You always buy your own clothes, so you're suspicious right away. She looks up at you and then hurries away. You think that she's trying to hide something from you. You decide to give her, but you don't want to do that, so you give her the benefit of doubt. You remember that your anniversary is coming up later in a week, which means she's probably buying you a gift. Now you begin to feel happy with her. You leave the store to get her a gift. Now you've reframed what at first seemed like a negative situation into a more positive and realistic one, right? So this is a very, very small example. Here you can see it was almost like an automatic thought. The automatic thought was, why is she in a men's store? Why is she buying men's stuff? So what is the next thing? Oh, do you think she has a friend of the opposite gender for whom she is buying something? Then you realize, oh no, it's our wedding anniversary, so she's probably buying something for me. So you can see it's such an automatic process. So what is the message here? You can train yourself to remove a negative thought and replace it by a positive thought instantly. If you do it every time, that will become your pattern of behavior. And when will that occur? First of all, you need to identify that your thought is negative. I had a negative thought. No, this is not true. Challenge that thought. Why am I thinking this way? Why am I thinking in a negative sort of way? Replace it with a positive thought instantly, then that will become your pattern of thinking. Now, this is a very, very, focused example, but this happens for any small thing. Now, all mothers will agree. Let us say they have a child who's gone to school, and the child has not come back for 10 minutes. What is the first negative thought that comes to their mind? I am very sure something has happened. If the child is in a bus, the bus has broken down. If the child is on a cycle, the child must have fallen. If the child is coming with another boy in a two-wheeler, I'm sure they've had an accident. What else must have happened at school? Maybe he missed the school bus and didn't even get into the school bus. So it's a train of negative thoughts. And what happens instantly? Anxiety, stress. One small example, but that one small example has already put the brick in that Burj Khalifa which is building up. Okay, so that is what you need to train. Okay, the child did not come at 4 o'clock, it's 4:10. So what do you tell yourself? Oh, it's a natural thing. Probably the child has gotten into the bus and there's a load of traffic, and so the bus didn't get here. Positive way of looking at it. And when you ultimately, the child comes home and you ask the child what happened, oh, there was too much traffic on the road. And the child isn't even bothered. He's a happy child. And also you must understand that minute you translate that into conveying it to the child, oh, I thought you might have had a fall. I thought the bus might have broken down. You're transferring your anxiety also to the child. So that is also something that is going to happen as a negative consequence of your own anxiety. So this is the importance of the thoughts, what are known as automatic thoughts that come to your mind, and the importance of cognitive reframing that has to happen at each time. This kind of a negative thinking is also a pattern. Some people tend to do it more, some people tend to do it less. And it is also a very gender specific thing. You have women folk, kindly don't get upset with me, but this is what has been observed, and this is what has been found even on studies, that women tend to think negatively and anticipate negativity and become anxious much more than men. Maybe it's a biological evolution process where the woman has to, kind of fend for the children, take care of the children, take care of the home. So it's probably a protective mechanism that has developed in the woman, but women tend to become anxious much more than the man. You will have the man thinking much more cognitively, much more deductive thing. The first thought that would have come to him is, oh, traffic, whereas that would be the last thought on the woman's mind, because as an evolutionary process, man was meant to, be a provider. So he had to think constructively in order to achieve what he had to do. So this is one small example, and this is a very tiny way in which we have negative thoughts coming. And if we don't change that, recognize it, it becomes a way of life. We analyze every situation in our life in a negative sort of way. And so we must be very sure that if we already have that process going on, we have to identify and we have to change it. Very comforting for us, definitely reduces our level of stress. So that kind of a negative thinking has to be replaced by positive thinking. Positive thinking is, what does positive thinking mean? Focusing on anything that is positive, focusing on anything that is good. Default mind setting focuses on negativity. So we have to change it to default mind setting. Think of positivity. Think of opportunities. Think of strengths. Seek out the positivity and change towards the positive. In the given situation, especially during this pandemic, I have seen loads and loads of people who have great difficulty in thinking positively. In the first during the first lockdown last year, things did look bad, but people really didn't think so much. But with the second wave and during the lockdown and the fact that the world lost a lot of people, India lost a lot of people, Bangalore bore the brunt of the pandemic, and we lost a lot of people in Bangalore as well. This issue of negative thinking has kind of replaced all forms of positive thinking. So it's gotten much, much worse than it ever was. So this is a fallacy of thinking that we have to be very careful about. No negative thinking as much as possible. Even if it comes, push it out of your mind. Get your mind into the positive setting. Think about the positive things. Think about your strengths. Think about things that have been good in your life, and think about your strengths instead of your weakness. So this is one of the ways in which you handle your stress. Then coming to your own behavior. Now, we talked about a lot of other things that contributed to stress. So behaviorally, how can we change in order to reduce that stress? I'm going bottom up: diversion, distraction. So what is it that we do when, for example, a simple thing now during the pandemic, you switch on the television, what do you see? So many cases, so many deaths. This is what this hospital didn't do. This is what this doctor didn't do. And this is what the politicians didn't do, etc., etc. So much of negativity there. And that is enough to bog you down for the rest of the day or maybe rest of the week. So what do? You divert yourself, right? Look at things which you can handle and which are under your control. There are a lot of things which are not under your control. Just let them go, right? Divert yourself, divert your mind to positivity, distract yourself, keep yourself as busy as possible at this point in time. But what I'm talking about is also a lifetime. When any negative issues come to your mind, keep your mind distracted and do not encourage negative thoughts. Humor is a good way. Have people around you who laugh and make you laugh, or you be the one to laugh and make others laugh. Cultivate that as a habit. When you're highly distressed, use ventilation as a mechanism. We all see in the Indian culture, we are all accustomed to sharing. We have relatives, we have close friends, we believe in sharing. Okay, use ventilation as a mechanism where all your negativity to a certain extent is expressed and comes out of your system, and that is replaced by positivity. So use these mechanisms in order to relieve yourself of your stress. The first 2 points that I have put, be assertive, get organized, etc., talk more about your behavior in your occupational setting and in your day-to-day life. For example, one of the questions the ladies asked were, how do I manage, how do I parallel process? How do I take care of everything, my home, my child, my work, etc., etc.? There, the first thing would be draw the line. Look at your red line. How much can I do? How much can I not do? Identify that. Do not expect so much of yourself that you can't do it. There's nothing wrong in saying, I can't do this. Now, why do we do that? Why is it that we fail to tell somebody, I cannot do this? It is basically because I expect appreciation from everybody. I do not want blame from anybody. I do not want people pointing fingers at me and saying, you did not do this. And so I go overboard, I cross the line, and I do everything so that I am appreciated. Now, that is the fallacy. Expecting so much of yourself, even though you can't do it. So draw that line. Say, I am not going to do this. Yes, it is going to upset those around you, but you'll be surprised if you sit back and say, I'm not going to do this. Somebody to whom it is important will pick up that task and do it. Now, supposing they don't do it, that means the task itself is unimportant. Think about it, right? So how do you, factor in and deal with so many issues? This is the way you deal with it. You recognize what you can do. Whatever you can do also, it's impossible to do 3-4 tasks excellently. You may be able to do only one task well. Do that one task well. Whatever little attention you can give to the other tasks, go ahead and do it. If you can't do it, drop it. There is nothing wrong, because here it is about taking care of yourself in the long run of life. You're going to last, remember, life is not a short race, it's a marathon. You have to last the entire marathon well and healthy, which is what we're talking about today, right? And in that, you may have to be a little assertive. You may have to be a little more organized. It's impossible for me to cover all situations and all examples. So in the paucity of time, we also lost half an hour. I'm just trying to give you a gist of what I actually wanted to say. I wanted to actually take more questions from you all. We'll try and do that. So why is it that we're not assertive, either in the work setting or at home or with our children or with our spouses? Why are we not assertive? Why do we not stand up for ourselves? We should, right? The reason why we are not assertive, like I told you, is that we have a low self-esteem. We're not confident about ourselves, right? Because we we are interdependent and sometimes so dependent, either physically or emotionally, that we don't much care about ourselves and we fail to be assertive. Assertive doesn't mean you yell, scream, and shout and have a huge quarrel. No, verbally and non-verbally, through communication, it is possible for us to be assertive. The typical no means no as a message. So that is the kind of assertiveness that we need to practice in our day-to-day life. It doesn't mean you have to hurt those around you. It doesn't mean that you have to blame them. They have to understand. Now, if you try telling them that this is not possible and they react to you in a negative sort of way, then I don't see that person as being very caring or considerate of you. And that person will probably, is probably using you in his or her own way. Then that is definitely more the need why you should be assertive and stand up for yourself. So being assertive is one way of reducing your own stress, because that way you get to do what you can, you get to do what you want to do. So assertive skills is not something that comes easily for everybody, and it doesn't come, overnight. So what are the things that you need to do? You need to, in terms of talking, in terms of behavior, appear confident about yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to be inconsiderate or rude. Whatever you say it in a manner that is firm and that you mean what you say, and that you're not going to give in if somebody is going to maybe try to overpower you. Those are assertive skills. Why do we need assertive skills? To reduce our stress, because basically we're all equal. Each and every one of us has a right to say what they want to say. They have a right to talk about their opinions or beliefs or feelings. You're allowed to say no. Saying no doesn't mean you're not capable of doing something. It means you don't want to do it. You have a right to not want to do something. You have a right to change your mind. You have a right to be yourself. You have a right to decline another person's responsibility. Let that person deal with the responsibility themselves. You need not take on everybody's responsibility on your shoulders, because that means the end of you, right? So there's no need to do that, right? And it also means that when you need help, you have to learn to take help. Asking another person for help is not something that is going to pull you down in a negative sort of way. It is realistic, it is good, it is constructive to take help from another human being, from anybody around you. So you have a right to be taken seriously, and your needs have to be met. You have to have your own priorities and work according to your priorities. If you're able to do this, the stress that is within you comes down, which is why we are talking about this. Much of the time, we don't follow this. I talked about being organized. I'm sure all of us are organized, but now and then we have slips in our organizational either capacity or the diligence with which we stay organized, and therefore we get into some trouble, and there is chaos and we are stressed. And as far as possible, we should try and avoid that. Time management is a huge thing. We all know about it. We manage our time every single day. So it is good to stratify what you have to do as a must do, should do, like to do. What is a must do has to get done. Whatever comes next can wait. It can get done later, or it need not get done at all, like I said. So plan your day, and most importantly, set achievable goals. Don't cross the red line in your setting of goals. We talked about ventilation, problem sharing as and when required, humor. Laughter is the best medicine, like they say. It is extremely important because it relieves you of a huge stress. Laughter in every form, what you watch, what you hear, what you share, and even one person in a group of people who can make the others laugh is a very welcome individual in that group. Remember, exercise, humor, etc. secretes endorphins within your body, and these endorphins act as natural painkillers. And exercise is also one of them. It releases a lot of endorphins, which we say, that's why we say one of the ways of reducing stress is to get your share of exercise a day. Even if it's a 15-20 minute walk, or whatever form of exercise, cycling or skipping or jogging or whatever you used to, is extremely important to have that endorphin release. So diversion, distraction, take time out for yourself, even if you're a busy housewife. 15-20 minutes, half an hour a day, take time off for yourself. If you have always enjoyed reading as a young person, learn to read at least 3 or 4 days a week. You think watching the television or watching a movie is going to relax you, ensure that you do that. Reduce your stress level as much as possible. Every day. Remember, you can't wind the clock so tight that at the end of the week on a Sunday, you expect it to suddenly totally unwind. That is not going to happen. How much ever you have wound it in one day, you unwind it the same day. That is the way to keep your body and mind healthy. And of course, change your lifestyle, get adequate sleep. We talked about leisure, relaxation, exercise, etc. Have a good diet, because it's very important. When I say diet, I don't mean you eat confined amounts of confined foods. I don't mean that. I mean a balanced diet. And anything in excess, smoking, alcohol, anything at all, is going to definitely harm your body. Sleep is a very, very important part of everyone's life, because that is when your body and mind rejuvenate. All of us have to pay a lot of attention to sleep, which we don't actually. We have to be very careful about that. So change your lifestyle. So with that, we've talked about causes of stress, identification and admission, and ways to control stress. And hopefully, when you've worked on yourself, this is how you will be totally relaxed. Maybe not by the beach hanging on two coconut or banana trees, whatever, but kind of peaceful in your mind and stress-free as much as possible. With that, I would say I'm done. I'm looking forward to some questions, more specific ones that you have stated. I will start off with whatever was asked by you people initially. You talked about how do we bring about the best in us. The best in us is just to follow these very simple principles. What do I want to do? What can I do? How much can I do? So you bite off only how much you can chew. Don't bite off so much that you can't chew it. You can't do best in 10 different things. Then that's not the best. You can do best in one. Even the second job that you take on will not be your best. It will be slightly less than the best. So you need to identify that, which is why you need to prioritize. So if you want to do your best in your life, keep yourself physically fit, keep yourself mentally fit by keeping yourself happy by all the mechanisms that we talked about. Keeping yourself relaxed and happy is your responsibility and totally in your hands. You cannot turn around and blame another human being or point fingers and say, I'm unhappy because of that person. You are unhappy because you choose to be unhappy, because you have not put in that much effort on yourself to stay happy. So we cannot point fingers at anybody. If we follow these principles, the principles are very simple. They are hard to follow and they have to be learned. Okay, which means, see, learning is an easy process. We have lived a certain way all these days. We have to unlearn that and we have to learn this. So that's a difficult job altogether. But it is never too late to start. Whichever stage of life you are in, you can always start now. And if we can keep ourselves happy, the best will come out automatically. Other question was, how do we parallel process and manage all responsibilities? That's why I told you my whole presentation is very generic. You have to take that and you have to apply it to your way of life, your issues, you as a person, your surroundings, etc. And if you apply it, then there'll be no question of not being able to manage. You definitely will be able to manage. Do women take on more responsibilities? Yes, because their role is such that both at workplace, both at your workplace and both at home and with the children, you are expected to give off your best. But even there you draw the line. Beyond a certain stage, you must remember that your spouse or your children are capable of taking care of themselves. And if you haven't let that happen, it means you've actually failed in your job. You've failed in your responsibilities because you've not let them take over. When do they grow up? When do children grow up and become adults and understand that they have responsibilities to fulfill, that they have to answer another person, isn't it? So when are you going to teach them, if you're going to do things for them till they are 20 or 25 or 30, or as a mother, what are the things that you do? So yeah, one of the comments here is, leave work stress at home and don't get your stress leave work stress back and don't get your stress home. That is very, very important. That's a segregation all of us have to make. It's literally like a switch that you have to put off. The minute you leave work, you put that switch off, just like you off the light in your office, and then you come home and you don't open that chapter in your house. I know it's becoming more and more difficult with work from home, but I'm sure that it's not impossible. Again, it's like if you want to take on huger things, if you want to take on responsibilities and you want to prove, to others that I can do well, and you want to compete in an unhealthy sort of way, you'll tend to bring work home. So we have to try our best not to do that. That stays there, this stays here. There are two separate lives. If they fuse, definitely there's going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of stress. So I don't know if I've answered your questions. There was one about overcoming anxiety. Overcoming anxiety is identifying the stress of anxiety. First, you identify what the stress is, because somewhere within you, you will know, okay, this is causing me anxiety. You identify that. Then the next question is, how do I deal with that? If I deal with this, I'll have to be rude to somebody. Very simple example. I have a child in 10th grade who I pack lunch and I send lunch for the child. The child comes back and keeps the school bag in the room and refuses to take out the lunch bag and give it to me for wash. What happens? The lunch bag is there, and next day I don't have a box to put the lunch in. So then what do? I yell at the child. The child may oblige sometimes, the child may not oblige sometimes. So then there is a kind of a friction that goes on. Why do you not say anything? Because you don't want to hurt the child. You want to be a good mother in the eyes of the child. Now, so I will tell the child repeatedly, get your lunch box out, and the child doesn't do it, I will pick it up myself. So now the child has learned, okay, you're going to, if I don't do it, you're going to do it, so I'm not going to do it. So what are you teaching the child? Go ahead and be what you are. I will stress myself out. I will cross the red line. I will go pick up your box. I will wash it and fill it with food the next day for you. So all of it again depends on you. Are you ready to stand up? Are you ready to be assertive? Are you ready to upset your environment so that the environment also rectifies itself and you are not stressed? Isn't it? So overcoming anxiety is again your hands to identify and to deal with it in a positive sort of way. Right. I think I have somewhat clubbed and covered the whatever questions were asked. No matter what the stress is, how do I behave in a normal sort of way? Just make sure that the stress is not there. Don't carry it in your mind. If you deal with it immediately and you're direct in your communication, like I said, communication doesn't have to be rude, or it doesn't have to be like an argument. Communication can be a statement, and very often you will find that statements work better than you yell and scream at somebody, because it evokes negativity in them and that lands up in a quarrel. But if you can make it as a statement, more often than not the other person will imbibe that statement and think about it and act about it. So whatever you have to say that is unpleasant for you, make it as a statement, right? Now, let us say somebody is serving themselves in the kitchen and they have spilt food all over the place. And you say, look, you've dirtied this place, and you can serve yourself without dirtying this place. Okay, let us say you dirty it. At the end of your meal, kindly just clean the platform and then leave. It's a statement, right? Person doesn't do it, you may have to say it again, right? Probably that will produce much more results than you shouting and screaming and getting into an argument. So, like I said, it's very hard to tailor make and offer answers to all the queries that we may have. But these are, say, a pocket full of suggestions that we need to extract from and use in our day-to-day life. Anybody who wants to ask a question can unmute and discuss, or you want to share, you want to discuss, anything is welcome, participants.
Ma'am, there is a question in the chat box.
Okay.
One of the participants, they have asked us about mathematical modeling of emotions, including stress.
I'm so sorry to disappoint you. I'm not very sure I know that. I haven't read up about that. Maybe I should be reading up about it. But it's interesting that
Thank you.
there's something like that. Thank you for the information.
Okay, ma'am. Dear participants, if you have any doubts, you can clarify from ma'am.
I don't think anybody will have doubts, but maybe people want to share either experience or have any queries or how they dealt with any kind of stress. How do they deal with stress? They can share anything. I know it's a large audience, but anything that you want to share. Or any other suggestions, queries, everything is welcome. I hope this was beneficial in some way to you all. You can also read up about these things. There are very simple articles. There are very simple write-ups about stress that have been written by professionals. You can read that and apply it and try to apply it into your day-to-day life. I hear a lot of very useful messages saying it was useful. I'm glad. Somebody wants me to share the PPT, and do you have access to the PPT?
No, madam. Later after the session, you will have to share to us.
Okay,
So that we
I'll
will
send
share
it
it to all participants.
Okay, I can send it to Rupa Madam's.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, madam.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other contributions?
Okay. I hope all our participants have got they're satisfactory with your session, madam. I think they have got the answers to all their questions, I guess.
Yeah,
It's
that-
that especially the tip and trick which we started with that ABC. I think we have to follow it. So we'll keep that 3 alphabets in our mind, try to incorporate. Thank you very much, madam, for your such an enlightening talk, and it was really flourishing for us. Thank you, madam.
Thank you for the opportunity of addressing such an enlightened audience.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, dear participants. So for today, it is done. I hope it was really a good start for this entire faculty development program. So tomorrow, we expect the same support from your side. So we'll meet at tomorrow at 9:30. You will have to use the same login link. And I request you all to join the meeting 5 minutes before. Thank you, dear participants. Have a good day.
So thank you very much, ma'am. Lakshmi, ma'am, it's very much.
Thank you.
You are giving so much information for stress, especially. Okay, thank you once again. We are expecting same support in your side, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
We'll continue.
Meeting.